Good afternoon, Professor. All right, for today's assignment, we have the textured sphere. So what was provided to us was a starter code to make this textured cube, and then now we were instructed to change that cube into a sphere. And as you can see here, my code is in yellow, the starter code is in blue. This is my output. I'll show you it in my IDE. And yeah, so here's the code. I compared it. There's a lot of yoink and twisting. I added a couple other things as well to handle some cases, because I did come through a large problem in the making of this, but I was able to solve it ultimately. But so here's the code. Here's the citation of the book from where the code was came from, and then let's dive into this. So, for proof, here is the output PNG on my IDE, and here is it on the code, just for proof to make sure that I'm not pulling it off the internet. I actually made it. Just having to build it for us right now. There we go. And there's our sphere. There's the texture on the sphere. And for reference, that's what the texture looks like. Put it on there. Alright, so let's dive deep into this code. So we have our imports. We have vector 3 calculations, and I added some vector 2 calculations, and then seeing the faces and the camera. So a lot of this was in the original code, however, I did change it a bit to my liking for what I wanted to do, and I added an intersection. Here's the 4x4 matrix for all the polygons, the rotate, and then the parser, which was in the original code, the starter code. However, I changed a lot to configure it for the sphere. And then here are processing the faces to how I wanted to. I've added some quad face integration, and then create those faces. And then here is the code to launch it, and the coordinates given, and then insert intersect triangle, intersect triangle here, and had an algorithm that was used. Calculate the UVs, and then the sample texture calculations. So, where do I begin with this? Starting off, we have vector 1 and vector 2. So vector 2, vector 3. So from the starter code to the new sphere object, just inputting the new object didn't quite work. So a lot of it would just it would make this sphere, however the texture would not map. There would be missing triangles all over the place, and that's where the intersection comes from, and then the alteration to the rays, alteration to the cameras, all comes from that. So a big thing is these parsers. So a parser, we have a lot of the same things, so the file paths and the switching, but case F in particularly is the thing that I wanted to touch on, which is the main thing here. So a lot of these things were just standard, just adding the different cases, but then for case F, essentially, like, how do we handle something that isn't quite there? How do we handle the faces? So it was essentially looking like a ball of a bunch of triangles, with gaps and triangles as well. So how do we fix that? So I came to learn that the object is actually a quad face, which is splitting in the triangles. So then I wanted to fill in those gaps. So then I had to calculate what did those faces mean, and I did that through that, where I created a face every other triangle to kind of make a pattern and to fill in the thing and create that face. And down here, here's the intersect, so kind of calculate exactly what that triangle is. Here's a calculation from the original. So you calculate what exactly that triangle is, get the vector 2, calculate the UVs, so then it maps it And then the texture, how do we put texture on those faces that don't quite exist? And that's what that function does there. And with all of that, we get this output here. I wish I had an example of the previous output without the faces, with the starter code. It basically essentially kind of looked like the sphere from a different angle. I altered the camera to center up. But it looked like a bunch of triangles that were missing in the center of it. But then now it's all filled. The texture is wrapped. Although it is quite zoomed in, like the texture is very zoomed in. I kind of like how it looks. It blends very nicely, and the texture doesn't look super wonky. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.